let's just jump right in. $50,000 is in your pocket. You've got to buy a Corvette. What are you going to buy? Is it going to be something that you're going to hold for an investment, or is it something you're going to drive and depreciate the car, so to speak?
Me first.
Go.
I'd buy two C4 ZR1s, drive the snot out of one, and save the other. I still think the ZR1, I've said that for a long time, and I'm sitting next to Mr. LT5 ZR1 right here, but you can buy two for that kind of price, or buy one hell of a nice car and have some money left over. It's a future L88. Come on.
You bet. Yeah, Mike, you stole my thunder. I was going to say buy two ZR1s, and I drive the snot out of both of them. Drive them like you stole them is what I say.
Hey, Michael, you think you ought to introduce the rest of them? Will needs no introduction, but he'd like one.
I think each person can introduce themselves and give a 20-second bio, if you will.
All right, I'm Will Cooksey, and is this mic on or off? It's on? Okay. I don't really need it that much. But anyway, I'm Will Cooksey, former plant manager for Corvette manufacturer there in Bowling Green. 1993 to 2008, I got that record, the longest running plant manager. So all I ever wanted to do was have that job. So
Will, we know you did a great job, but I think they were intimidated to say, well, we have another assignment for you.
Well, if it's anything other than Corvette, I was not interested in it. A lot of people asked me that question, and I said, well, the way they move managers today, I wouldn't have had the privilege of staying in one place, because today the plant managers have moved around, I think, every 3 years, I believe. And that is not what I like for Corvette. Because talking to all you guys and gals out there, you need somebody that's been around a while to answer all your questions.
So what car are you going to buy, Will?
Oh, see, Tom set me up there. Okay, Tom.
$50,000.
See, I thought I was going to let that go through there and keep moving to you, Tom. Well, in the last year of C4, the best cars were being produced out of the assembly plant. And we had two LT4 versions, the collector's edition, I think it was, and we also had the Grand Sport. So those two cars, to me, were quite undervalued, and I see them right today. I'd say that I'd probably, if I could get one of each, I would do that. I don't know what they're selling for now, but $50,000 might give me two of them.
It could.
One of each. And then I would not alter them or change them. I would keep them and put TLC, Tender Love and Care.
Tom?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Tom Hill. I'm worked with Corvette for 35 years. I started in St. Louis and then moved to Bowling Green. And in January, I had a life-changing event where I stopped working for Corvette. I didn't think that would ever happen. But I had a new opportunity, so I'm managing a car collection now. But basically, if I had $50,000, I think I would shop for a 2013 427 convertible, and I would give it to my wife.
Hey.
And
Boy,
then
that's smart.
And then I would start a fund. I'd start a savings plan to pay for the speeding tickets.
That's good.
But I really think that 427 convertible is the keeper of keepers of the C6s, because that is just everything about that car, the way it looks, the way it drives.
Yeah.
I really like that car.
It's a nice car.
Go ahead.
I'm John Kraman. I'm the consignment director for Mecum Auctions. Proud to say that we are now the world's largest collector car auction company. You'll also see me and some of my compadres. Bill Stevens, he's here in the crowd with Corvette Nation as well. On television from time to time, covering the Mecum auctions. I don't know that anybody has probably got a better pulse of really what's happening with today's current Corvette market, particularly in regard to vintage Corvettes, than those of us that are involved with Mecum. At our Dallas, Texas auction just a few weeks ago, had about 150 Corvettes at that auction. Sold over 75% of them at an average price of about $65,000 per car. Point to all this is just to remind everybody that the Corvette market, the vintage Corvette market, despite a little bit of a rocky economy, is very strong and very robust right now. $50,000 in my pocket, what I'm going to buy for a Corvette? I've already done it. I happen to own, I've owned it now for 4 years, a 2010 C6 Coupe, LS3 6-speed. Is it going to go up in the future? Probably not, but it doesn't matter because I love driving it. 25,000 trouble-free miles on it. We drove it down here 4 hours, averaging 30 miles per gallon at 72 miles per hour. Pretty hard to beat that one.
Boy, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great there.
Terry?
Well, my heritage is NCRS, and if I had $50,000 in my pocket, I'd buy another 70 LT1 to sit next to the one I've got. And I'd probably have a little bit left over to keep it running, and I'd drive this one.
Right.
But I love driving the 2008 Z06 I've got. That's got 57,000 miles on it now. Before the summer's over, it'll have 60,000 miles on it. And it's one of the better cars Will built.
Agreed.
Very good.
Nice
Fred?
interior, too.
Fred
Yes,
Gallasch,
thank you, Tom.
worked on the Corvette program for about 12 years. Somewhat of a collector. My problem is if I had $50,000, I'd have to sell something, make room in my garage for the next one. But I would, if you can get it for 50, I'd go for a Grand Sport, 96 Grand Sport. I have one that's sitting in Ken Lingenfelter's collection, but I'd get another one that I could drive.
Hop on in.
Well, I think we have
Miles?
one coming, but I'll start real quick anyway. My name's Miles Kornblatt, and I'm the curator at the Desert Collection that's in Miami. You'll also find us at Miami Auto Museum, where at any given time we've got about 1,000 vehicles on display over 8 galleries. And I also dabble in some writing. I do some magazines and books.
Yeah, maybe it wouldn't.
But
being
if I've got $50,000 to spend, I'm going to get a big block C3. Hopefully it's a 427. Maybe it has to be a 454 because I have to have a little bit left over because I'll get an 84 white Corvette and put the red stripe down the side so I can do it just like the 18.
18, man.
Damn
Well,
right.
speaking of C4s, I think the C4 market is a great entry point for a new Corvette owner, if you will. You can get a lot of bang for your buck from 84 to really up to the mid 90s. The whole span of the car. What advice do you guys have to a new buyer coming into the Corvette market? Anyone can start with that.
Michael,
and roll.
I agree with you that the C4 is a great bargain, particularly the later years of C4 where the quality was slightly improved over time. And if a young person or someone wants to get started, that's the place to do it. The price is right.
I think what I would say is I bought my first Corvette when I was 16, and I didn't have any money, just like the kids today, but I figured out how to get a Corvette, and I didn't care what it was. I bought a 68 convertible, 327, 350 horse, and it had a cat living in it. And it was beat up pretty good, but it's all I could afford. But I got started. I learned about Corvettes. The car was a terrible car, but I got started, and I think that's the secret. I think there's kids out there that want to buy Corvettes. They just need someone to urge them, and I think the best thing we can do is put them in a car, let them drive it, let them experience what the Corvette's all about, and they'll figure the rest of it out. We don't need to tell them how to do it.
Tom, while we're on that subject real quick, not to interrupt you, Dave, could you tell us real quick about your seminar that you're doing today?
Oh, yeah, at 1 o'clock, we're doing a seminar for kids. So I'm looking in the audience. You can't come. But it's just for kids 16 years of age and younger. And we're just going to talk about cars. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about because I don't know who's going to be there yet. But hopefully we have some young kids out there and we start to explain a little bit about how cars work, what the names of all these parts are, what they do, and then what makes Corvette a special version of an automobile.
Hey, I'll
And,
bet there's guys in this audience and gals who could behave like they're 16.
Most of them.
We're going to
Yeah.
keep you out of the tent.
In the C4 seminar this morning, we had a guy in the audience who has a 1984 with 200,000 miles on it.
Yeah, he's
So, yeah, they should be pretty robust cars without a lot of problems.
And economical to fix, which is great. That's the
Now, the entry price on a C4 is what do you want to spend? You can go low, you can go high, but what a lot of car for the dollars that are out there. You know, we all know that a Corvette is a ticket to get into an event like this, so go buy a C4, come out and get involved in the Corvette hobby. I stood on the line this morning and greeted customers as they came in, and a lot of our guests had young people with them, and that's part of the reason I stand on that line to say hello to everybody, to see, you know, what age is coming in here, so to speak. I saw a lot of car seats on the right-hand side. That was pretty cool.
That's good.
So Corvette's very fortunate in the fact that we have shows like Corvette Funfest, we've got Corvettes at Carlisle, we've got Bloomington Gold, we have so many great shows, and a lot of other marques, believe it or not, don't have their own individual shows. You know, they get lumped into a lot of car shows. So what car shows would you recommend that are non-Corvette but just all car brands? What shows would you recommend that Corvette people go to attend to kind of broaden their knowledge of cars, if you will?
I got an easy one. Come to Woodward Dream Cruise. If you want to see 60,000 cars in one place on one day, you'll do it. Come to Woodward, call me up, and we'll have a drink together.
I think if you're looking at high-quality cars, interesting cars, Corvette and Muscle Car Nationals in Rosemont, they have probably... You know, we do a lot of car shows during the year, and when it comes to Corvette and Muscle Cars Nationals, we have all kinds of volunteers to do that show, from Mopars to Mustangs, certainly Corvettes, but everything in between, high quality, a lot of really nice cars up there.
Yep.
And I go back, I would go to a Mecum auction, I'd go to a Barrett Jackson. You're going to see a lot of cars. You know, you can't say it's not a car show. All the car people are there, and good cars.
And I gotta say this for those. Some of you live up north, right? And I
What's
live in,
up north, Tom?
I live in Florida now, so I have completely forgotten about snow. But when you need a break from that cold weather, I think, from what I've seen, one of the best shows to go to. Well, no, I'm going to say is Amelia Island. Amelia Island in Jacksonville is an outstanding show, and you see everything. I think there were 262 cars or something there this year. Every one of them was a #1 car.
Yeah, Bill Werner does a
Yes, he
great
does.
job
Yes.
with that
It's
show.
Pebble Beach without the attitude, basically.
And you're right, Tom. As a trader out of Kentucky, you aren't even 6 months into Florida, and you're bashing us Northerners.
There's actually, when you're talking about up north now, Tom, yeah, up north for us is Jacksonville, but I'm even further south than they are, so that's a thing, right? But in Iowa, the Iola Old Car Show, not Iowa, geez, Wisconsin. I think Iowa. But the Iola Old Car Show is just one of those places where you see everybody who really loves their cars. It's a huge, huge mix, and it's strictly outside. If it's strictly outside of Corvette, that's one of my favorites. That are just people who are passionate about four wheels.
So we've kind of focused on the past of Corvette. We're seeing a lot of supercars come out with hybrid technology, and as we all know, we can look at the supercars of yesteryear are now your everyday street car. So we're seeing hybrid powertrains going into the LaFerrari, into 918 Porsches. You're starting to hear rumbles about, will you see a C8 with a hybrid type system or a Formula One KERS type system? What are your guys' thoughts on Corvette adapting some kind of a hybrid system as we move into the future?
Whoa. Well, Mike, a minute ago you gave us $50,000. Now you need to give us $1 million. If you want to buy a 918, we need about $800,000 to just buy it, and then we need to hire a trained mechanic to keep it running.
I agree, but I think we're gonna, like it or not, it's kind of the way of the future. And Corvette has had 50 years.
It's certainly part of the technology opportunity that exists today. Yes.
Any comments?
Yeah, I just say one other thing. I mean, Corvette's always been about value. And believe me, when they figure out a good way to do, whether it's electronics or fuel cells or whatever the future propulsion system is, I guarantee Corvette will figure out how to do it. And they'll figure out how to do it faster and better than anybody else. And when they get all done, it'll be something really cool and you guys want to buy one. So I'm not too worried that, we're not chasing the technology. We're going to benefit from the technology, just like we always have. And the Corvette will be out ahead of everybody else doing it, and we'll do it at a competitive price.
So when's that going to be out, Tom?
Yeah, well, I can tell you anything now because I don't work there. Next year you'll have it. No, actually, you've seen all the articles. I think every magazine's got an article. Mark Royce basically broke the story and said, yes, we are working on a mid-engine Corvette. Dave, we were working on a mid-engine Corvette when you were there. Will, we were working on a mid-engine Corvette. I mean, we've been working on a mid-engine Corvette since
forever.
we've got the Serve 2 over here, which was really the first mid-engine that Zora did.
Yeah.
Every chief engineer has wanted to do a
Serve
mid-engine. And of course we want to do a mid-engine. Are we going to do it? We'll see.
Maybe one of
We'll
these
see.
days.
You know, Tom, you mentioned Corvettes. Right here on this campus, we have Serve 1, Serve 2, and XP 819. 3 rear-engine, rear configuration Corvettes. They're here. That's part of Corvette and Chevrolet's history and heritage, the developmental side. Pretty cool cars. So XP is in the Fun Dome, and Serve 1 and 2 and the 67 L88 are over at Tom's place
by the
this
big
morning.
black truck.
By the big black truck.
One of the things that we've kind of discussed internally as a family or as a company is we've seen a lot of Corvettes starting to break over $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. And we kind of have two thoughts with that. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, who have always seen Corvette as kind of America's car, and we like, Ferraris and Porsches. So I think we've two thoughts here. You're starting to see Corvettes get to that marketplace where people are saying, hey, you know what? It's okay to have a 67 Corvette next to my 60 short wheelbase Ferrari. But I think that's also helping bring a lot of people into the market. Do you guys see these higher end cars selling as a good thing for the marketplace to bring people into the Corvette hobby?
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think anytime that you've got a commodity or a vehicle that at one time was considered to be accessible to the average person that no longer is accessible financially, there's a little bit of a factor there. But on the other hand of things, what we're seeing with, like you're saying, $1 million Corvettes now being not that uncommon is it's putting attention to other Corvettes that might look similar and have a similar vibe, yet is going to bring a fraction of that money. And I think some of the best examples are to compare any of the L88 cars from 67 to 1969. A non-L88 variant of those cars can be bought for a mere fraction. Example, you're not going to find one of the 20 1967 L88 Corvettes at this time. $3 million is the baseline, but what's the baseline price of a 1967 Corvette Cooper convertible with a standard 327 300 horse engine? Probably around $60,000 to $75,000. So, I think that if you want investment grade, you want the best of the best, you want the bragging rights, and you want everybody to know who you are with what's considered to be the top of the investment grade level of a Corvette, you're going to have to step up into it. But the vintage Corvettes are still accessible in the large collector car market value-wise.
I think I can echo that in that when I look at my collection, what's happened to the cars in it, I'm proud that they're up here, and then you turn around and say, would you buy at that level? Then I change hats, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So I like, I went to a real simple school, and most of us up here, other than maybe Tex and Jerry Heasley down there, we learned that you buy low and sell high. And that's always the formula. Works all the time, Jerry.
I have another take on that. Another way to get a car, to buy a good car, is you go ahead and pay a little more than it's worth because time will catch up with it. And like, say a car is $70,000, it needs some work, you're better off to pay a little more, get a better car.
Yeah.
Especially if it's an up and coming car. It depends on the car. But I always say buy a better car because time will catch up with it. And all my friends that have collections, they're in their cars right now, but they weren't when they bought them.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't. If you want the car, why worry that you paid $5,000 to $10,000 more than it's worth? If it's a good car, now if it's a bad car, you need to leave it alone. And And there are lots of bad cars out there.
I think you always buy the best that you can for your wallet.
There you go.
And that may not be the quality level, but the future quality level of it. And, you know, all the ladies in the audience, hold up your hands a second, real high so I can see as I'm saying this. Remember, your husband never pays too much for their Corvette. They just bought it too early. And you all volunteer that you heard that.
Guys, last question from me, and then I'll turn it over to the audience. Unfortunately, we're approaching the end of our summer shows. What advice do you have to Corvette owners going into the winter for storage, for putting their car away for a period of time? You know, a lot of people, unfortunately, just turn the car off, put it in the garage, and they're done, which is not my recommendation. So what do you guys have to say about that?
Hey, Paul Kerner, did you hear that question Michael just asked? Because this is the man, because most of our customers here have C5, C6s. And Michael's question was, and you didn't even use his microphone. This is Paul Kerner. He finished the seminar, who knows, an hour ago, and he just finished the leftovers after that, so to speak. The question is, they're getting ready to store their car for a winter. What advice do you have for people who do not drive their car over the winter and store it?
Well, strictly speaking, fuel stabilizer is the biggest thing. I mean, fuel is definitely today's fuel formulations are really not the best. So what you want to do is you really want to go in and put the fuel stabilizer in, especially with ethanol content, things of that nature. Because, you know, let's face it, gasoline evaporates very quickly and it does break down over time. That would be the first course of action. Second thing, obviously if you're talking 5th, 6th, 7th generation, obviously you want to disconnect your negative battery cable so that your battery doesn't run dead. Third thing, I mean, really is subjective about putting your tires up on blocks so they don't develop flat spots, especially with the older bias ply tires. But really after that, you know, it's pretty subjective as based on the individual model. But those are the three things that I really would suggest more so than anything else.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, my suggestion is just drive it in the winter. I mean, you know,
Why don't you do what
I
Tom
get
does?
criticized.
Good day, just take it out
I
and
get
drive it.
criticized all the time for having my cars and I don't have a car cover on them. They're in my personal garage, not somewhere else, and they'll say, "Well, you need a cover on that." I said, "No, I go in and out all day. I want to see the car." So, I mean, if you don't want to get into fuel stabilizers, all you got to do is fire it up. I mean, how long is winter? You know. Well, I mean, I fired it up. Why can't you drive it in winter?
You don't live in Detroit.
You can always do what Tom did, and that's
Well,
move to
I've been in
Florida.
Detroit. I was in Detroit at Dearborn Inn there one time, and they didn't have any. There was no heat to my room. I wore a jacket to bed. So I know it's cold. I know it's cold
Shut
up
his
there.
microphone
But
off.
you got heat. You got heat in your car. I mean, Detroit. I say drive it.
Well, there's also, we sell commercial time, but we sell a desiccant to keep moisture out of your car, which with the electronics, and if your car draws a lot of moisture, that's not a good thing. Hey, Paul, either that microphone or this microphone, I have to say this every time I'm in front of you, near you, about tell these guys what they need to do with their batteries, because that, you know, there's older guys, and maybe we're on this side of the table. Sorry for those of you who aren't. You know, when you disconnect your battery, you squeeze the spring ring at the top and take it off. Well, now you use some kind of a wrench or something.
Yeah, you definitely use a torque wrench, and you want to make sure your fasteners are accurate, especially when you're tightening down battery cables. Obviously, side terminals are 11 foot-pounds, and top terminals are 89 inch-pounds. But regardless of that fact, Mike brings up a good point about moisture. And regardless of where you store it, remember, concrete is constantly releasing moisture. If you are dealing with a sensitive electronic system like 5th gen or 6th gen, even the older 4th generations to a certain extent, that level of moisture contamination, a desiccant is a good choice, it's a good portion of that. So you want to keep the moisture out of specifically the interior, so I can see that side of it as well.
Now, you did tell them to torque their batteries down, because that's still,
Yeah, and
I'm old school.
Yeah, but old school, regardless of that, side terminals have been out since 3rd gen. So, I mean, even back in the 3rd generation, you still had to torque your battery terminals. You had to make sure that they were accurately tight, because noise and vibration, they loosen up over time.
Yeah, it's tough, yeah.
To put in a plug, at 1 o'clock today, I'll be talking about storing your Corvette. So
around.
Okay.
Well, with that being said, any questions from the audience? Yes.
I'll be coming shortly. I'm at the expert panel. I'll be there shortly.
Battery tender.
Battery tenders.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you could definitely use a battery tender. Remember, Corvette Engineering is now equipping cars with an optional battery maintainer also. I mean, battery maintainers and battery tenders can certainly be used in any real vehicle, whether it's Corvette or otherwise. It doesn't hurt you. It's a little bit of added measure of insurance against your battery running low. But a lot of times the sensitive computer systems, sometimes they can be a little bit problematic at times. So remember, disconnecting your negative battery cable is also a good way to reset your system for the year. What year is yours? A third, a fourth, and a fifth? Third, not a problem. You can leave the battery tender out. Fourth, even still. You know, you only had up to 4 modules on that were really sensitive. Fifth generation, it's really a judgment call on your own. Either way you go, it's really not going to hurt you any. If you're going to start your car during the winter storage months, definitely let it run for at least 30, 40 minutes. The reason why is you want to drive the moisture, as we were talking, out of the exhaust system, out of sensitive components, the engine bay. So you definitely want not just a 10-minute start, because that's just not enough. You need it at least 30, 40 minutes, give or take.
Half hour.
Okay?
Yeah, these guys up here were giving me some coaching. Say you also want to run it long enough to heat your oil. And that's not oil for your house, Jerry.
Anybody else?
What a shy group.
That is a shy group.
I think they're a know-it-all group.
Yeah.
Well, we got Nathan out here. He knows most of it. And what he doesn't know, he makes up, so he's pretty good at that.
Well, thank you. Oh, one out here. He's saying fresh oil and a new filter at the end of fall, which is also a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Thank you to the panel. Thank you guys for all coming this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and enjoy the sunny weather.
And enjoy what I think is going to be a record crowd here today. There's a bunch of Corvettes. There must be a Corvette event going on here today, is what I'm guessing.